Hello, my friends. I'm Pete Torre, and welcome to episode 5 of the Pete Torre Show. Before we move on, I want to thank my sponsors, Jackson Health System, Best Practices Title, and Clutch Burger. My purpose is to inform, educate, and inspire you to take your business, your career to that next level and enhance your life. Today's guest, all the way from Berlin, Germany, will be John Price, Managing Director of America's Market Intelligence, LLC. And following John will be SBA spokesperson, Victoria Guerrero. About my first guest, John Price is a veteran of Latin America market consulting and one of the leading public speakers and thought leaders in the region. John has advised more than 30 of the global 100 firms on their business strategies and market intelligence needs in Latin America. John has published over 100 articles on Latin American business trends and maintains a column in the region's largest circulated English language magazine, Latin Trade. Now, allow me to introduce John Price. All right, John Price is with us here today. How are you, my friend?
I'm well, Pete. Great to see you again.
Thank you so much. Just for so everyone knows that's watching this broadcast, John is, we went national last week and now we're going international. John is coming to us from Berlin, Germany, where he's with his family. He's been there several months now through the whole COVID thing. And how does it feel to live out there, John, compared to being in the U.S.?
Well, other than the weather vis-a-vis Miami, it's certainly, most of Europe is still restricting movement,
Sure.
still dealing with fairly high infection levels, and just have a more controlled, restrictive way of doing things versus certainly fairly libertarian Florida. I must say I prefer the Florida way, but there's arguments for both sides, I guess.
There is, it's you've got to consider both sides of it, and that's we're going to get into our discussion now, but kind of on a side note. We've had to make so many adjustments throughout all of this and pivoting, and it's also understanding each other a little bit better and respecting everyone's views and opinions for this
That's right.
COVID thing. So it isn't just a one-way track. We've got to learn. A lot of folks are just really protecting themselves and they're enclosing more and they're going to stay there until they feel confident. And others feel, like I said, a little bit more liberated and they want to go out there. So you've got to respect both. And I think if we do more of that, then we're going to get through this a little bit smoother than just a one-way track, which is
Agreed.
never really the way to go there. So, well, John, I want to go ahead and open up our discussion. And this is, kind of along what we're talking about here. Most people in Miami are aware that no region has suffered more in lives and treasure from COVID than Latin America. Is there an end in sight to this suffering?
Well, you're absolutely right, Pete. Latin America has been devastated. In spite of the fact that I'm presently in Berlin, I focus all my professional efforts on Latin America, have done so for almost 30 years now. And it is heartbreaking to see how COVID has impacted the region, both, of course, in terms of the death count, but also the human toll of some of the most severe lockdowns in the world. Mm-hmm. That have remained in place in some places off and on for a year now. In much of Latin America, schools remain closed. And, I think for Latin America, which was never able to contain the virus, like, frankly, most countries around the world, the only route out of it is through vaccinations. And so there are certain countries, Chile and Uruguay, who are definitely well ahead of the rest of Latin America in terms of their vaccination programs. The Chileans, I think, not surprising, nor the Uruguayans. These are countries that have always been well governed with good institutions, pretty good public health systems that were not cheap in negotiating their vaccine purchases, were relatively transparent. There wasn't this sort of shenanigans we're now hearing about in other countries where purchase agreements were made with suppliers, and there's some certainly echoes of dubious behavior related to that, whether it's nepotism or corruption. But in Chile and Uruguay, I think they've progressed really well, and they will, as a result, be able to open their economies fully, and consumers and voters in general will feel more confident about returning to lives as normal faster. The other success stories are found in small island nations. Around the world, island nations were the quickest and most successful at containing the virus, including in the Caribbean. Both wealthy and underdeveloped countries, they had that advantage of being islands. And in some of those countries, the vaccine programs have moved ahead quickly, countries like Bermuda and Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will probably see some success stories in the Caribbean as well. For most of Latin America, and Brazil and Mexico being sort of the largest, mm-hmm. and right in the middle in terms of vaccination progress, we're looking about till the end of the year before they can vaccinate herd immunity.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've been in this region forever, and you're one of the top experts, understanding and working in Latin America on so many different levels. From what I'm hearing from you, isn't it pretty much the makeup of Latin America, in terms of just infrastructure and efficiencies and being stalled by government that are in place at that time? And so is it surprising to you that this is happening in Latin America just from this COVID experience?
No, I don't think anybody's terribly surprised. I mean, Latin America, we predicted at the very outset of the pandemic that this would be the hardest hit region in the world.
Yep.
Because of a combination of things. First of all, Latin America is the most urbanized region in the world, has higher urbanization levels than the United States. A lot of people don't know that. It has a surprisingly aged population, the fastest aging population, and it's older in countries like Argentina, Cuba, Uruguay than even the United States. So, and then of course, they are under-resourced in public health, but particularly in acute health, ICUs, ventilators, they were always under-resourced. Mm-hmm. And then, generally speaking, particularly in the last 15 years, there's been a loss of faith by voters in their governments, in their capabilities. So the ability to corral people through difficult policies. And then, of course, 70% of Latin Americans work informally. Mm-hmm. So lockdowns, it's very difficult to get money to these people. It's very difficult for them to maintain their livelihood at all. And so lockdowns really, although they seemed the only policy option at the time, were unsustainable economically.
Sure.
So all those factors together have made it a devastation to the region, for sure.
What about the economies of Latin America, and which ones do you believe will rebound fastest? And this is the big question: when? Sure.
So all markets in Latin America fell last year, and including most of the world, frankly. And in terms of how quickly they respond and which might respond first, we actually did an interesting analysis that we published recently, and it looked at things like, how quickly are they going to get to herd immunization? How much money can they continue to spend, these governments? Some of them are highly indebted, others much less so. What are their export mixes? Latin America has always exported its way out of economic crises in the past. So who has the right export mix to lift the region out, or the country out? Where are investors feeling confident and planning to invest? And how are the currencies holding up in these markets? And when you put all those together and you take into account that one of the good things for Latin America is that the US and China are both forecasting strong growth this year, and they're the two biggest customers of Latin American exports. So that's a positive. But we believe that Chile will be the first to rebound. They will probably reach herd immunization by the end of June. And they're all experiencing positive growth. The question is, how aggressive will that growth be?
Sure.
And so, Chile is sort of at the head of the pack, followed by Peru. Peru, of course, had probably the largest collapse of its economy last year, but did an amazing job at channeling money to small business into the informal sector. The DR has more aggressively opened its tourism market more than any country in the region.
Yep.
Has done a reasonable job at controlling. They also have in their favor a hot, humid climate, which frankly, we know scientifically helps slow the contagion of any virus.
Sure. Absolutely.
Followed by that are Mexico and Brazil for different reasons. Mexico, because of its strong central bank and the fact that it didn't spend a lot of money in COVID, so it can keep spending if it wants to. Brazil, because the reforms that are going on there, in spite of all the bad news about Bolsonaro, there's been some good economic reforms that are really helping that economy and fostering investment. And then Uruguay, again, because of its excellent vaccine program. Panama, just because trade lifts that country, although they've really been hurt badly by this pandemic. Colombia and Argentina and Ecuador are countries that, and along with Panama, that have been hit very hard and will take longer to come out of this. And of course, bottom of the pack, unfortunately, as always, is Venezuela.
Yeah.
We don't even know really the death toll in that country. We do know that the economic toll is harsh and that price of its principal export oil continues to be below its historical average. And so you put all that together and it's looking pretty devastating in Venezuela this year.
John, on a side note here, and I have another follow-up question I want to ask you is, now that the Castros are no longer running Cuba, Raul Castro resigned 2 weeks ago, and they have new leadership there. It's not that they've been in transition and all this, but what do you see in terms of Cuba moving forward? Just like I said, on a total side note.
Sure. Well, the ability to reform Cuba, and many people inside Cuba recognize the need to reform things in Cuba, is really driven by two factors. One is internal and one is external. The external, of course, is how the U.S., the bilateral relationship with the U.S. Ironically, the harder we push, the more hard-edged our policies, U.S. policies towards Cuba, generally reinforces the arguments of the hardliners in Cuba. And when we've seen them backpedal a little bit and allow more opening, it's generally being aligned with a softer posture coming out, or a more accommodating posture coming out of the United States. Mm-hmm. But I think a bigger factor, frankly, than even U.S., the U.S. likes to think that they can manage Cuba's economy or influence it. A much bigger influence is what is happening to those old hardliners. And most of them, within the party, the Communist Party in Cuba is just as divided as any political party in the world. And those old hardliners, which are obviously symbolized by the Castro brothers, have held on to power by force, by all the things that we know they do. They are going to die off soon. And there is a younger group who would like to turn their positions of power into positions of wealth, which generally, with few exceptions, the leadership of Cuba has not enriched itself the way former communists in Russia enriched themselves, former communists in parts of Eastern Europe have enriched themselves. And so I think that there is a hunger by those people to not only improve the economy for everybody, but also, frankly, to enrich themselves. Mm-hmm. But they've been held back by the old hardliners. And until those guys get out of the way, it's going to be tough for them to do it. But Absolutely. This might be the first step.
Yeah. Anytime you may have similar views, similar philosophy, but the personalities of each person dictate Absolutely. What's really going to happen there, because not everyone is different, and how they approach things and all that. We're out of time, but this gives us an excuse to come back again. And what I want to do in our following conversations, and it'll be good to see how things develop, is to talk about industries. and how, we see what's going on with industries here in the United States, and how is that reflected in Latin America, what's going on. So we'll give us a little bit of time to put our hands around that. John, thank you so much for being with us. Again, everybody, John Price is Managing Director of America's Market Intelligence LLC, and one of the top experts, thought leaders of Latin America, and always very, very gracious that you take time to be with us. And I really always look forward to our conversations.
Pete, it's a pleasure. I applaud your work, and thank you for what you do for the city.
Thank you, my friend. Take care of yourself.
All the best. Take care.
Right. Thanks once again to John Price for his update on Latin America. And now for my second guest, SBA spokesperson Victoria Guerrero, who will share timely and valuable information for small businesses. Let's hear from her. Victoria, how are you?
Doing well, Pete. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, it's a running clock. What's going on right now with small businesses as it relates to the COVID situation here, and the SBA has worked not overtime, not triple time, but quadruple time in the last 11, 12 months of all of this here. And my first question to you before anything else is, how are you and your team have navigated through all of this, this whole change and everything having with COVID?
Well, one thing I want to tell your listeners and viewers is that, we're all experiencing, in a sense, the same thing. We're always telling our small businesses, you guys need to pivot because of this pandemic in order to be able to keep reinventing yourself and moving forward. Well, the SBA has, in essence, have had to do the same thing in order to help our small businesses and the economy keep moving forward. We've had to, create programs. Our legislators had to get together and brainstorm and create these wonderful programs that now we're implementing for our businesses. And this is to keep them running, which in turn keeps our economy running. So we've also had to turn on a dime to get things rolling.
And you've got colleagues around the country, and it's not always easy to do that because there's a lot of moving parts and different departments. So let's get right into the gist of the conversation. We're learning new acronyms now through all of this, of course, and I've discovered new ones that have become kind of everyday language. Let's start with the PPP.
Absolutely. So for those of you who do not know, the PPP has an extension. Folks have until the end of May of this year to apply. But Pete, I got to tell everyone, if you haven't applied, do so right away because the funds are starting to run out and we want to make sure that we get the funds to the individuals that need it. So you have until May 31st to apply, but I will not wait if I were you.
Yeah.
I would go ahead and apply with your local bank as soon as possible if you do need the funding.
The PPP, of course, Payroll Protection Program, correct?
Correct. Yes.
All right. Yeah, I've personally, as a small business owner, I've gone through the process, and it's a great opportunity, and I think that any small business that needs it, just jump on this thing here because it will run out. Not that these monies are going to be available forever, and because of the high demand that's out there for this. Go ahead.
The great thing, Pete, just to remind folks, it is a forgivable loan. That's what makes it enticing, right? So as long as you use the funding the way it was entitled to, your loan can be potentially forgiven 100%. So just to remind folks, a minimum of 60% of your PPP funds need to go to your payroll, and the rest can go to eligible business expenses. So that's what's really nice about this program, that although it's a loan, it is a forgivable loan so long as you use it the way it's intended to be used.
That's exactly it. And we want to make sure that all of our viewers that are small businesses are using these loans, these programs, the right way. Okay. Not that it happens, but it's not to fund a vacation. This is done to keep your business moving forward, to keep it sustainable, keep it alive because of what's happened in the pandemic. All right. The infamous EIDL, Emergency Injury Disaster Loan. Let's get into that.
Well, our IDA program is our flagship program. Whenever there is a disaster anywhere in the US, that's the program that the SBA offers to small businesses. Now, that program, it's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, Pete, just like you said. This is a traditional loan, so you do have to pay it back. Mm-hmm. What's nice about this program is that the term can be up to 30 years of repayment. And currently, the program has a deferment period of 24 months. So if you not have yet applied, the deadline to apply is the end of this calendar year. So in essence, December 31st, 2021. Or if funds run out sooner, then the program will close sooner. But this is why I always urge folks, Pete, to try to apply. If you need the funding, go ahead and apply now. Don't wait.
You know, that's a great message across the board. Is you have these opportunities that, you know, unfortunately came about because of the pandemic. It's unfortunate that we had a pandemic or still have the pandemic. The good news is that these programs have been initiated, of course, passed by Congress on the funding side. But it's not to sit back and just, I've got all the time in the world. I mean, if your business has been affected by COVID, you felt it immediately. Mm-hmm. So I think it's incumbent on any business owner to act in the same way. Immediately get on top of it. This is critical to the life of your business. And you can't have this attitude that the money is always going to be there. Why rush? No. We want you to rush because A, the funds are going to dry up, and B, how much sooner do you want your business up and running again? And that's, I think, the two reasons why business owners need to act on this and work, you know, especially if they've got a professional advisor like a CPA, you know, work with them, make sure the numbers, the you know, are there, that you're working with someone that is working your numbers, your financials, because there are certain questions that need to be answered in the right way, or else if not, it's going to delay the process here. And that's what we don't. And that's and you got to remember the SBA, the demand is so high across the country. You know, they're not going to necessarily, because once you apply, they're going to turn around and give you an answer in 24 hours. It takes time because of the sheer demand. And you're seeing it on your end.
And if folks who haven't applied and you're wondering where to go to sba.gov/disaster and you can apply there versus PPP. Remember, PPP is managed through our bank. So you would have to go to your local bank, or if they're no longer accepting, some banks are no longer accepting applications, but I don't want you to worry. For PPP, you can still go to any other bank in your vicinity that is accepting application. There's no penalty and there's no cost. So PPP is through your bank and EIDL is through our website at sba.gov/disaster.
Fantastic. All right, we got a couple of other programs to talk about here. Again, back to acronyms. RRF.
Yes, the RRF, that is our Restaurant Revitalization Fund that was created by the American Rescue Plan Act. And this is a wonderful, wonderful program for our industries that have been hardest hit, which has been the restaurant industry or any industry that's in the food and beverage umbrella. This program will provide restaurant owners funding equal to the pandemic-related revenue loss that they've experienced, up to $10 million per business and no more than $5 million per location. So it's a wonderful program that, you know, restaurants and those that are in the food and beverage industry should apply for. I highly recommend folks to go to sba.gov/restaurants to get additional information on this program.
And we all know around the country, the hospitality industry, the restaurants, everybody got hit hard. But those two specific sectors probably got hit as hard as anyone throughout all of this. You know, the shutdowns, and you couldn't stay at hotels, and obviously couldn't eat at restaurants. So I'm very happy to see this program available. I have so many friends that are in the restaurant industry, and you know, this is something that is specific to them. And can make a specific difference. So you've got another exciting one, SVOG program. Drum roll.
Our SVOG is our Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program. Now, this program is specifically for those entities that had to completely shut down during the pandemic, Pete. So these are folks like we're live venue operator promoters. We have the theatrical producers, the museum operators, the zoos, motion picture, any entity that is open air and open seating that had to completely shut down during the pandemic. Those are the folks that can apply for this. This is an actual grant, and all the information for this particular program can be found on sba.gov/SVO for Shuttered Venue Operators, SVO, and there you'll have all your information as to timelines and deadlines, what you need to prepare, things of that nature.
These were also lovingly called non-essential businesses during the pandemic. These were the businesses that, they were essential businesses that were allowed to be open, and then non-essentials, movie theaters or whatever that might be, concert venues.
Right.
But I don't know. I have my own personal opinion about that definition of non-essential. So I think essential across the board. When you were running a business and it was, let's say, your family business, and it's the industry that you picked, and then your livelihood depends on that, and then they were saying you were not essential, you can't open. Well, that business was essential to that family, to that business owner, but that's a whole different topic. It's not something you and I can control here. So I mean, you're sitting in a very interesting seat right now as the SBA. And the SBA has been around, 70 years or so, give or take, and it's been, the family member, the brother, the sister, the sibling, in many ways, of the small businesses around the country.
Mm-hmm.
That organization that is there for funding, but also education. How is that evolved in the last 11, 12 months, that other piece about education and talking about different things that help the small business owner?
Well, I appreciate that question, because one thing I wanted to tell folks, Pete, is I wanted to remind folks that the SBA is not only here during times of disaster. Some people think we're here only to help when there's a pandemic, or if you live in South Florida, a hurricane or what have you. But that's not true. The SBA is here every single day of the year to help our businesses with any challenges or assistance they need. So remember, we have a lot of training programs that are at no cost or very minimal cost to individuals. We have free one-on-one coaching with our business consultants through our resource partners. We have resource partners across the nation that folks can call, schedule either a virtual meeting or in-person meeting to help them with anything business related. So it could be how to start your business. It can be reviewing your financials, how to recruit, creating a strategy to grow your business. If you want to do international trade, we have programs for international trade too. If you want to get into federal contracting arena to sell your business and services, we have programs for that. So I urge folks, when always think of us as a business partner for you, where we are going to be here for anything that you need every single day of the year. So I really want folks to make a relationship with their local SBA office and their local resources. And Pete, just to give folks where to find this information, you can go to sba.gov. That's our general website. But if you want to find those resource partners and your local SBA office that's close to you, go to sba.gov/locations. And there you'll put your zip code, and it'll give you a list with all the contact information of the folks that are close to you that can help you with anything you need business related.
I know, and I shared this with you when we started to talk last year during the outbreak, when it all got started. For many, 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 many years in my program, in my show, I had a great ongoing series with the SBA called Let's Talk SBA. It was on weekly. This is when I was doing my daily show, and we would go on every Tuesday morning and speak for maybe 20, 25 minutes about everything to do with the SBA, and had the pleasure of just talking to so many of your colleagues locally, regionally, nationally. And we want to see how we can start getting back on that, because when we talk about small business, and that's the backbone of our economy, right? This conversation with you and many others with the SBA is so important, for them and giving them the right information about what you have been doing, what you're doing, and we want to see how we can get back on track on that. You and I have further conversations on that. But listen, thank you so much for being with us on this program. This is information that you can't put a price tag on, but it's so important to get it out. Talk about the deadlines coming up. Talk about the sense of urgency of getting your things done now, and so that you can take advantage of all of these programs to get your business up and running again, and obviously, thrive for the long run. So any final comment that you'd like to share with us?
Again, thank you so much, Pete, for having me here. And I want to urge folks, if you haven't applied for these programs, please do so. If you want a list of all of our programs and just one website to remember, go to sba.gov/relief. You will find all of our programs that we spoke about there today. And please remember, SBA is here with you every step of the way. So, just hang in there. We will get through this pandemic and everything will be all right. So thank you again. And Pete, thank you again for having me here today. I really do appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Have a great one. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you to Victoria for this very important information for the benefit of the millions of small businesses around the U.S. I want to thank you, my audience, for joining me today, as you do on every one of our episodes. Make sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and my YouTube channel, Pete De La Torre. As we part ways, I will leave you with this. Have a vision for tomorrow, yet keep an eye on today. Take care of yourself, and God bless.